Ivy Valentine subscribes to Mark Yoon, so should you. Enjoy your treat!
So we had a Kombat cast yesterday with comments turned off, and there was various amount of speculation as to why that was. There may be other issues or factors involved, but the main point that I want to discuss and talk about now is actually like an earnings call with the CEO of Warner Brothers. So I want to actually really dive into this. I'm sure some of you have already seen this floating around. I just want to read this first and then I'll get into my thoughts. There's a ton of reasons why this is the case and a ton of reasons why it's also equally unacceptable, but let's just read this together. So Shinobi602 posted on Reddit a quote, like a direct quote from CEO David Zaslav from Q3 earnings call. So this says, WB will focus on more live service games going forward. And here's where the quotation starts. Our focus is on transforming our biggest franchises from largely console and PC based with 3-4 year release schedules to include more always-on gameplay through live services, multi-platform, and free-to-play extensions with the goal of having more players spend more time on more platforms. Ultimately, we want to drive engagement and monetization of longer cycles and at higher levels. We have put specific capabilities. We are currently under scale and see significant opportunity to generate greater post-purchase revenue. Okay, so there's a lot of lingo in there that is normal corporate speak about certain aspects of different kinds of games. Now, the one thing that I am super frustrated in is that some of these larger corporations feel that they have us by the balls, so to speak. Like, they have the community right where they want them, and they are not really considering what the majority of people are going to care about, because Mortal Kombat has been normie-centric for a while, so they're going to legitimately just rely on those purchases and not on the people that are actually invested in the product itself. So when they're saying things like live service and stuff, we've already seen hints of this in even in Injustice 2 and further back, but Mortal Kombat 1 really showed us where their direction was heading, with having barely any content at launch. The game is broken and buggy, and yes, they talked about in the live stream yesterday they've actually fixed some of these problems, but they didn't mention anything about the monetization practices. I'm sure everyone has heard by now about the $12 fatalities. Some people are saying it's not really $12, but if you play other live service games, it is $12, because for $10 or $9.99, you get like 1,200 crystals, but that leaves you with still needing 50 for most of the premium purchases, like the fatalities. So in order to get that other 50, you can't just purchase 50. You have to go up to the $2.99 bundle and get that. So that's why when you combine those together, yes, you have a little bit of crystals left over, but one single purchase would literally cost at least $12.99 to get that one fatality, unless you're putting more in, like the $19.99 or whatever. So as egregious as that is, and color swap palettes being premium cost, being 500 crystals, and earlier costumes like the Indiana Jones one being able to be won in the actual shrine itself with zero transparency, because they don't tell us like what you can possibly win and what the pool is, but then still offering those up in the premium shop and having a lot of people purchase those. With those little tiny things and the microtransactions here and there, it's a clear-cut foundation of where we're going. On top of each character having like their own kind of battle pass format, which is also not okay in my book. And yes, we've seen some other companies try to implement something similar to this, like Street Fighter 6, for example, has a battle pass system similar to what you would see in like Fortnite, where you gain levels. If you pay in and opt into the battle pass, you get stuff out of it. Now, the big difference that I've seen complaints about, and I agree with, is that fits a free-to-play model. So if your game is free and then it's heavily subsidized by microtransactions, battle passes, and external DLC that costs real-world money, we can see that needs to go back to the developers, needs to go back to the programmers and the artists and the investors and all that stuff. So there's a lot of that involved, and I can understand that. And whoever wants to spend however amount of money, whether they're a whale or not, to each their own, right? But going forward, they said this is our forward trajectory. So going forward, this is their plan. So when we get like Injustice 3, or when we get something even further ahead of that, it's going to be laden with all these kind of things, even probably in a more so worst case scenario than these. And I have heard one of my developer friends talking about they're probably going to be using Suicide Squad as a test bed for this. I'm not sure if it's going to be free to play, but if they do want to test a free to play model and actually monetize the game that way, it's surely going to be a different experience. Now, I'm not sure if a lot of you remember this, but on the PS3 era, after the last generation of current games for Tekken and Soul Calibur, they actually tried this approach, Bandai Namco did. So we had Tekken and a new Soul Calibur game that were both free to play, free to start. Think of like Dead or Alive Core or something like that. It had a very, very, very extremely limited roster, and anybody that you wanted to buy, you had to literally purchase with real world money just to add them to your roster, including gear pieces and customization and stuff like that, because if I do remember correctly, you start in like your underwear in like Soul Calibur, and then like you literally had to purchase like real world money in order to actually dress your character up. There wasn't a lot of earning potential there, and that's since from that generation bled over into the PlayStation 4 for sure, and is now completely influencing this generation of the Xbox Series and the PlayStation 5. Now, Switch usually isn't really very monetized this way because they have a dedicated fan base, but we do know that there were financial earnings that are being a problem right now for WB. So NetherRealm, who is owned by WB, was put up for purchase not that long ago, a couple of years ago, for purchase, and they were actually planning on a different game, possibly Injustice 3, but it switched to Mortal Kombat 1 because they wanted to make the deal sweeter for the whatever company was looking to purchase them. Because if they have an outgoing product, they can tell those investors, hey, we deserve this much up front because we're going to be putting this much back in immediately. Look at the last sales for the last game, and we can at least have that earning potential for the last quarter of that game. So you're going to be getting your money back. So sweeten the pie, they're going to go with their biggest franchise, which is Mortal Kombat. Setting in motion the timeline of events in which we're now a part of. A lot of you, I don't know if you've seen, but there have been more Steam players concurrently playing Mortal Kombat 11 compared to Mortal Kombat 1 recently. And on top of that, there's not much hype for the DLC as I've seen for recent iterations, not to mention the fact that like 2 of the characters that are offered in DLC were literally in the game, the entire game through the story from day 1, and Shang Tsung was like a pre-order bonus to like prop that up as well. So the fact that like Quan Chi and like Ermac were not already playable put a lot of sour taste in people's mouths, and maybe they just didn't have enough development time to be able to procure more of those like anti-hero comic book-esque type characters to try to get more guests involved. So they just stuck with Peacemaker, Homelander, and Omni-Man, whether you like those or not. But all around, it seems like very lackluster. When we're talking about these financial monetization practices, what this looks like in reality would be, okay, let's get to the next Mortal Kombat, right? Mortal Kombat 1, 2, right? Or whatever it's going to be called. This may very well start off with a small cast of characters, let's say even 5 or 6 characters potentially. It may be a free-to-play or super cheap discounted title. If they go super discounted, they're not going any lower than like $40. They're not going to make it like a $20 title, but just because of name recognition and brand recognition alone. But it'll be something like 4 to 6 characters to start with, and then they periodically will let you play as a character for free and cycle it in, but like you only get to play with it for that time period, usually like a month. This is what Dead or Alive Core does. And when you're done, they usually offer that character up for purchase, and you can purchase whatever characters you want and add them to your roster. But in the long run, this costs you way more than it would just to buy like a $70 product. And that's not even getting into the other aspects of it, such as the microtransactions for costumes or variations or things of that nature, fatalities, brutalities, babalities, like whatever they choose to do in the future. But a lot of these things are concerning to me because a free-to-play model focuses on revenue post-launch as opposed to investment pre-launch. And pre-launch investment is where you spend a lot of your money on marketing, you make the game full of content, you focus group it, you pay outside sources to Q&A test it. You get the product ready pretty much for launch, the day 1 patch, because the game's probably already going platinum by that point. And you're spending all your money and focus on getting the game ready to launch. With a free-to-play model, you launch the game as is and you deal with things on the fly. So what you usually end up with is a far more broken product that people that want to stick around for end up paying for. Like, you literally become the financier of that. It's almost in a way like a Kickstarter campaign, because you're the bug tester, you're the one reporting the problems, you're the one giving the feedback, and you're the one that is paying the financial support for that team to be able to do those things, which some may not see as necessarily a bad thing, but it just pushes to show that like these egregious price attempts are far more than the average would be. For example, if you want to buy an entire character in Mortal Kombat 1, it's like $8, but if you want to buy a fatality, it's like $12, and if you want to buy a color swap, it's $5. Why is one color swap $3 less than an entire character? That kind of practice doesn't make sense in my eyes at all. And like, yes, $8.99 to $9.99 is like usual price for like a DLC full character, but tacking on all this extra stuff is like incredulous in my opinion, especially like when you see the bundles and how much they cost. This is it's not as bad as something like Dead or Alive 5 was, or Dead or Alive 6 was. That had way too much like monetization going on, like packs that would cost upwards of $100, and you couldn't opt out of certain things. You just get the costume for everybody and such. So they really got in a lot of trouble for that, and that contributed to their forced reboot now currently going on. But with NetherRealm, which it may not necessarily be their fault, it could be the parent company, it could be the publisher, but that doesn't matter anyway because they're compliant with that process and they have no choice but to offer their services up for that way. They may not even set the prices for the monetization, but it still doesn't matter, it falls on them. And a live service is a constantly changing, ever-evolving gameplay that requires constant online play. So if you play something like Fortnite, you would say that now like Fortnite is a completely different monster than it was when it came out in like 2017 or something like that, but that's still like that long. Do you really want to play the same Mortal Kombat game for like 10 years? I mean, I get stale on these games with full packages after a couple months, so constantly enthralling people with DLC is a good way to keep people in, but it's also a good way to gatekeep and to push other people out, because there's going to be FOMO that's involved, which if you don't understand that lingo, it's like basically if somebody has something and it is on a time limit and it goes away, it becomes more special or more rare and is seen as like an accolade of sorts because somebody wants that skin and they can't. Fortnite does this all the time. Their Battle Pass characters are not included in their actual purchasable store, so if you don't purchase the Battle Pass, you miss out on exclusive characters. For example, a lot of the Marvel and DC characters are actually exclusive to the Battle Passes and they won't return unless the license is renewed, which means that those characters are forever locked to newcomers or new players, and they may run around seeing those people with those costumes and want them really bad, but never actually be able to play as that character. So that's basically what FOMO is when it comes down to it. But if you want something that somebody has that pressures you to get the next exclusive thing, which means if there's a new premium storefront, even though there's a costume you're not necessarily that fond of, you're going to get it just because the exclusivity of it pushes it into a rarer perspective in your eyes, regardless whether it's common or legendary or whatnot. You want to be the person that's online that has that, or more importantly, you don't want to be the one person online that does not have that. And this also cuts into single player experiences, which a lot of people will push back and say, well, fighting games aren't made for a single player experience, which I would heavily push back on. But regardless whether that argument is in your favor or not, there are people who literally play this game and multiple fighting games only for the single player, especially when you have like these crap online servers and glitching through the floors and like people like holding up the combat mode and like not being able to let you proceed and all these things that like a normal person just doesn't want to deal with. So unless you're actually going for a leaderboard, which may get erased, by the way, my same developer friend who's been playing Tekken since launch, Tekken 7, I'm sorry, he's lost his status that he's gotten to the highest status, I think 3 times, and has had to reclaim it each time just because of server issues and like save data lossage. So even if you have cloud, even if it's digital, even if you're uploading constantly, that doesn't protect you from the servers. Like the servers have to be paid for and maintained. And when we're the ones monetizing these products, when we're becoming like the substitute investors, that's a really big problem. I don't know. So as somebody who played through the Soul Calibur free-to-play version and played through the Tekken free-to-play version and prefers the paid-for version games, and I'm now dealing with my lack of interest in Mortal Kombat 1 based on their monetization practices, among other things. And the game costing me $110 at launch, and I'm still now having to pay for battle passes and all this kind of stuff and all these seasonal fatalities and whatnot. I'm just not here for it. And the only way that we can tell these companies, and I know you've heard this 1,000 times, but I feel like I have to repeat it as well. The only way that these companies will understand, and there's no reason to simp for these multi-billion-dollar companies who don't give a crap about you. You're just a number to them. They're not even involved in the game making process, like whatever. So if we don't buy their product and they don't see their return on investment, and their investors don't want to invest in future products, and they're stuck holding the bag, you be sure that they are going to change their tune. They're going to go around and try to get that revenue back that they feel they lost. That's just the way things are. And I know everyone says it, but everyone's still gonna buy it. I mean, Madden has been a crap series since like 2000, like, I don't know, 15 or so. It's just the same game every year with an updated roster. Same with most of those EA Sports games. But people still keep buying it. People still need the new one, even though it's exactly the same as the old one. And that's where they're trying to get us. So, especially from that 3 to 4 development cycle that they're talking about, an ongoing free-to-play experience, it's just not going to be a fun experience in my opinion. And I don't know, it's time for me to turn the question over to you. I'm going to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below, or feel free to join the Discord and we can chat about it over there. But what I want to leave you with is, we are the ones that control the market. The market is based on supply and demand. If there is no demand for this type of game, there will be no supply for this type of game. They will compare it to past iterations of their own games, and they will go backwards instead of trying to push things in a monetized type of way for the companies. So if they see like Mortal Kombat 11 is getting sold more and played more than Mortal Kombat 1, they're going to go back on certain aspects and go more towards a Mortal Kombat 11, which may or not may be a good thing, because I think as far as the main generation goes, my favorite Mortal Kombat was probably 10. I like the gameplay probably the best in 9, but that's neither here nor there. That's just my opinion, and now I want to hear yours, so I'm going to turn it over to you. So with all that being said, please give the video a like and share it if you would like your friends to see this, and please comment down below and give me your thoughts. Any and all thoughts are always welcome, and as I always say, guys, I love it. Thank you.
And thank you.